Let's talk about money. Every single time you buy a coffee, send cash to a friend, or get your paycheck, there's this one secret ingredient that makes it all possible. It's totally invisible, but without it, the entire global economy would just grind to a halt.
So what do you think it is? What's the single most important piece of the puzzle? Is it the actual dollar bills, the technology, government rules? Nope. It's something way more basic, more fundamental.
It's trust. That's the whole secret. Just one little word, but it's the absolute bedrock our entire economy is built on. It's that gut feeling that when you send money, it's actually going to get there. And when you save it, it won't just vanish overnight.
And look, in the world of finance, trust isn't just some vague, fuzzy feeling. It's a concrete belief that the system is fair and secure. It's the confidence that the numbers you see in your banking app are real, and that the institutions in charge aren't going to mess things up. So, how on earth did we manage to build our entire global economy around a feeling?
Well, for centuries, the answer was pretty simple. Middlemen. We created these big specialized institutions, banks, whose entire job was to create and maintain that trust for all of us.
Think about how we got here. Way, way back, you had the barter system, trading your chickens for your neighbor's wheat. Super clunky, right? Then, boom, money was invented. A huge leap forward. But carrying around bags of gold isn't exactly practical or safe. And that's where banks came in. They became the central vault for everyone's wealth, and, more importantly, the central source of trust. And these banks pretty quickly figured out they had four main jobs to do. First, give us a safe place to stash our cash. Second, a system to send money to people without physically hauling it across town. Third, they could provide loans to help people start businesses or buy homes. And fourth, and this is absolutely key, they kept the master list, the big ledger of who owned what. They became the official scorekeepers.
So let's get real for a second. When you Venmo a friend $100, what's really happening? It's not like a little digital bag of cash is flying through the internet. Nope. Your bank just checks its records, sees you have the money, and subtracts 100 from its list. Then it just pings your friend's bank and says, hey, add 100 to this person's account. That's it. It's all just an agreement between trusted institutions to update their spreadsheets.
Okay, so that system sounds pretty good, right? But it leads to a really scary question. What happens when these guardians, the very institutions we rely on, fail? What happens when that system we all trust starts to show cracks? Because this whole centralized model has some serious weak spots. For one, a handful of people have all the control. They can freeze your account or block a payment just like that. They also charge some pretty hefty fees, especially if you're sending money overseas. And speaking of that, it can take days for money to cross a border. Plus, you're handing over all your private financial data. But the biggest vulnerability? It's a single point of failure. If one of these huge institutions gets hacked or just makes a really bad call, the whole thing can come tumbling down. And we don't even have to use our imaginations here. Just think back to the 2008 financial crisis. That was a brutal, real-world lesson in what happens when these trusted institutions fail. Millions of people lost everything. It was proof that our guardians were not perfect, not even close.
That massive failure, that complete breakdown of trust, got some really smart people thinking. They started asking a pretty radical question. If trusting people and giant companies is so risky, could we build a system that doesn't need them at all? Could there possibly be a better way?
And the answer to that question kicked off a total revolution in how we think about money. It sparked this huge conceptual shift, moving our trust away from people and organizations and putting it into transparent, predictable code instead. This is where we get the idea of a trustless system. Now, that name is kind of confusing, right? It doesn't mean there's no trust involved. It just means you don't have to blindly trust a middleman anymore. Instead, your trust is placed in the system's design itself, in math, in cryptography, and in open source code that anyone, and I mean anyone, can look at and verify for themselves. So let's put these two models side by side, because this makes it super clear. In the traditional system, who do you trust? The bank? The government? Verification is handled by one central authority, and they hold all the control. In a trustless system, what do you trust? Mathematics and code. Verification is handled by a decentralized network of computers all over the world. And the control? Well, that comes back to you, the user. So you can see this isn't just a small tweak or a new feature. This is a complete reimagining of what money and trust can even be. It is the core idea that has sparked a genuine revolution. So let's just boil it all down. Traditional finance demands that you have faith in institutions to do the right thing. Decentralized finance, or DeFi, comes along and says, you don't need faith because the trust is literally built into the protocol. And that's it. That right there, the vulnerability of centralized trust, is the exact problem that technologies like Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies were invented to solve. When you get right down to it, the entire concept is about this one simple, incredibly powerful idea. We're moving from a world where you have to trust who is handling your money to a new world where you can verify for yourself how your money is being managed.
And that brings us to the big question that we all have to think about for the future. What's actually more reliable in the long run? The imperfect, sometimes biased judgment of human institutions, or the cold, predictable, transparent logic of code? The answer to that is going to define the next chapter of finance.